Under the red shadow of a blood moon, the village of Nuri lay wrapped in uneasy silence. It was not just any night. The skies churned like old soup, stars blinking uncertainly, and the wind whispered in tongues no one had heard in generations. The villagers dared not sleep. They gathered around fires and clutched their charms, for the moon bled, and with its bleeding came omens. Old women spat over their shoulders. Men knelt with eyes shut tight. Children were shushed with trembling fingers. In the heart of the village, surrounded by anxious guards and tightly veiled midwives, the queen lay screaming. Her sweat soaked the furs beneath her. With every push, thunder growled low from the mountains. The royal healer, hands stained with effort and fear, caught the first child, silent, wide-eyed, with a mark on her chest that glowed faintly in the moonlight. A soft Z shape curled like a tattoo. The second child followed moments later, crying, wailing even, but with no mark. The healer gasped. The queen blinked through her pain, too weak to understand. The king, tall and proud, looked from one daughter to the other and understood what none dared to say aloud. From the doorway came the shuffling step of the kingdom's eldest seer, Tamu, skin like bark, eyes white with age, but voice clear as river water. She stepped forward, staff tapping with ancient rhythm, and declared, "They are the ones." The king looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Tamu's voice shook neither with fear nor uncertainty. "Born of blood moon, twin daughters of fate. One shall rise with a crown, the other shall fall with silence. The throne will weep until mercy reigns." The queen whimpered. The king's face darkened. Tamu said no more. She turned and walked into the night, her message hanging like fog around them all. By morning the order was clear. The kingdom would know only one princess. The second child, Amara, was taken away in secret, wrapped in silks but carried as if invisible. Only the king, one midwife, and Tamu knew where she was sent. In a temple deep in the eastern forest, far beyond the reach of gossip and court, the infant was placed into the care of a forest priestess known as Mother Eleni. She was old, gentle, and had never taken a child in her arms with more reverence. She did not ask questions. She only looked at the blood moon one last time, nodded, and took the baby in. Back in the palace, Zalika was named before the gods, bathed in petals and kissed by nobles. Her sister's name was never spoken again. Years turned like pages in a windstorm. Zalika grew strong, beautiful, and wise in the ways of the palace. She was adored by her tutors, admired by the court, and praised for her sharp tongue and clever mind. Yet there was something cold in her eyes, something distant. Sometimes at night she dreamt of another girl, her mirror image, walking barefoot in a forest. She never spoke of the dreams. They faded with morning like smoke slipping through fingers. Meanwhile, in the heart of the eastern forest, Amara thrived under Mother Eleni's quiet guidance. She was raised among trees older than time, animals that spoke in signs, and winds that remembered songs from forgotten kingdoms. She read the stars and listened to stones. She was taught never to fear the silence, for silence was not absence, it was truth waiting to be heard. Amara did not know her full truth, not yet. She only knew that she often felt the pull of something distant. A throne. A crown. A name that tasted foreign and familiar all at once. She wore her heart like a cloak, curious, questioning, but never bitter. She wondered about the palace she'd seen only in glimpses in her dreams. She imagined marble halls and golden plates, not knowing that her twin sister walked them daily with the same haunted gaze. In the 15th year of Zalika's life, signs began to appear. First, the river turned black for 3 days. Fish floated belly up and the priests could not explain it. Then a storm struck during dry season, but only over the palace. A lightning bolt shattered the eastern tower's bell, which hadn't rung since the birth of the princess. The queen fainted on the spot when she heard. The king grew restless, pacing at night, whispering about the other one. Zalika noticed his paranoia but said nothing. And then came the birds. Hundreds of crows began to circle the palace every dusk, cawing and crying until they disappeared just before sunrise. No one knew where they came from. Some said it was the souls of forgotten children. Others whispered about the blood moon's curse returning. Zalika stood on her balcony one night and watched the birds with unblinking eyes. One flew straight toward her and landed on the railing. It did not speak, but its gaze felt like a message. It flew away only when she whispered, "Who am I really?" At the same time in the forest, Amara woke from a dream in which she wore a golden crown made of feathers and bone. In her hands she held a staff that dripped with crimson. Around her stood people kneeling, their eyes filled with fear, not love. She cried when she woke up. She asked Mother Eleni about it. The priestess only placed a hand over Amara's chest, right where her heartbeat pulsed, and said, "Soon." Zalika's coronation was announced shortly after her 16th birthday. The kingdom rejoiced. Drums echoed from village to village. Dancers leapt in celebration. The king and queen smiled wide, but behind closed doors, arguments brewed. The queen began having dreams of a shadow wearing her daughter's face. The king sent spies into the forest, following whispers of a girl who looked just like the princess but walked barefoot and spoke to trees. One such spy never returned. Another came back babbling about eyes that burned and stones that bled. He died in his sleep that night, though no wound could be found on his body. Zalika was given a ceremonial dagger passed down from queens before her. Its blade shimmered unnaturally. When she touched it, she felt a tremor up her arm and heard a voice echoing faintly, "One shall rise." She dropped the blade and stared at her trembling hands. Her maids tried to calm her, but nothing silenced the voice inside her. That night, she walked the palace halls barefoot, searching for something, anything, that would explain the darkness nesting in her chest. She came upon a forgotten chamber behind the library, sealed with vines. Inside were old scrolls, sealed boxes, and a tapestry of two infant girls under a bleeding moon. The sight made her knees give out. She was not alone. In the forest, Amara stood beneath the same moon, now full and pale, feeling her chest tighten. That night, a falcon dropped a bundle at her feet, a tattered piece of royal fabric with a silver emblem, a snake curled around a crown. She held it to her chest and whispered, "What are you trying to tell me?" Mother Eleni walked to her slowly. "You are not lost. You are hidden. There is a difference." Amara asked, "What do I do now?" "Go where your heart trembles," the priestess said. "Where the moon wept for you." Amara looked toward the western horizon, toward the palace she'd only seen in dreams. Her journey had begun. And far away, in a palace choked with secrets, her sister turned in her bed, whispering her name. Not Zalika's name. Not her own. But something between the two. Something ancient. A bloodline had been split. But the throne had not forgotten. And it would not forgive. The palace buzzed with life in the weeks leading to the coronation. Servants moved like bees in honeyed frenzy, polishing floors until they gleamed like water, stringing gold-threaded banners across marble archways, and arranging roses and lilies in tall vases shaped like serpents and suns. Every corner of the kingdom spoke of Princess Zalika, the girl chosen by the stars, born under prophecy and blood moon, now stepping into her destiny. Her portrait was painted on scrolls, her name whispered in every house, her face sewn into cloth and carved into wood by village artists. Children danced in her name. Nobles toasted to her future. But in the heart of the grand palace, within a room veiled in silk and heavy perfume, Zalika sat alone, eyes heavy with sleeplessness. She hadn't dreamt of stars or gold or her future crown. Instead, her sleep was haunted by images she couldn't explain. A girl with her face but different eyes, standing on red soil with blood on her hands. A girl who looked at her not with love but sorrow. Every night, the girl came closer, her lips parting, whispering words Zalika couldn't hear, until finally she stood so near that Zalika felt her breath. When she woke, her heart pounded as if she'd run for miles, and the mirror on her wall sometimes showed two reflections. She told no one of the dreams. Not her maids, not the queen, not even the nursemaid who had raised her. But in her silence, something stirred. Her once steady hands trembled when she held the coronation staff during practice. She dropped the goblet when it showed her a flicker of someone else's face. Her tutors said it was nerves. Her mother told her to pray. Her father watched her from afar with unreadable eyes. On the other side of the kingdom, beyond the mountains and the stretch of dryland that separated the royal city from the eastern forest, Amara stood barefoot on river stones, washing a deer's wound with a poultice of crushed roots. Her hands were steady, her mind focused, but her spirit churned. It had been like this for weeks now. Restless days. Sleepless nights. Visions. Not full dreams, but fragments of places she'd never seen. Chandeliers, silver forks, velvet drapes. And a girl. The same girl again and again. A girl who wore her face. A girl who sat on a throne made of ivory and bone. Amara had always known she was different. The priestess Eleni had raised her with love and freedom, but never told her where she came from. When Amara had asked as a child, Eleni only said, "You came when the trees wept and the sky was red." She had accepted that for a time. But not anymore. Now 17, Amara felt an ache in her bones, an itch beneath her skin, like something was waiting to be remembered. One night, as she bathed in the moonlight, she removed the bead necklace she'd worn since infancy, a cord tied tightly around her neck. It had been a gift from Leone, one she was never to remove. But her hands moved of their own will, and as she loosened the knot and pulled the beads free, the cord fell to the ground, and with it, a secret. On the upper left of her chest, just below the collarbone, was a birthmark she had never seen before. It was shaped like a curling serpent forming the letter Z. She froze. Her heart raced. In that moment, a memory that wasn't hers flashed before her eyes, a wailing voice, blood on silk, a golden cradle, and a man with eyes like obsidian whispering, "Only one shall be known." She staggered backward and fell into the stream. The cold water cleared her vision but not the fire in her chest. She stared at the mark again, now throbbing faintly in the moonlight. She ran back to Leone's hut, beads still clutched in her palm. The priestess was waiting by the fire, eyes dim as if expecting her. "You knew," Amara whispered. Leone said nothing for a long while. The only sound was the crackle of the flame and the distant call of owls. "You are not a forest child," Leone finally said. "You were born of crown and blood. Stolen by fate. Buried in silence. Then who am I? The name given to you is Amara. But your first cry was heard within palace walls. You are one of two. You are." The screech of a falcon cut through the night sky. Amara and Leone both looked up. The bird, wings wide and black as ink, soared down with incredible speed, landing on the wooden fence that circled the hut. Its eyes glowed gold. In its talons, it clutched a bundle wrapped in aged silk. Amara stepped forward. The falcon did not flinch. It held out the bundle with regal precision. Amara took it with trembling hands. She unfolded the cloth carefully. Inside was a torn piece of royal fabric, deep blue velvet edged with gold thread, and in the center, a royal crest. It was incomplete, as if ripped in haste. But the symbol was unmistakable, a snake coiled around a sun. Her breath hitched. She had seen this before, in her dreams. On walls, on jewelry, on the crown worn by the girl who looked like her. A name spilled from her lips before she understood it. Zalika. The falcon launched into the sky with a powerful flap, disappearing into the clouds as fast as it had come. Leone watched Amara in silence. The girl stared at the crest, at the piece of a puzzle that had just shattered the life she'd known. "I have to find her," Amara said. "I have to find the girl with my face." "You are not ready," Leone warned. "To seek her is to awaken what sleeps." "I'm already awake." Back in the palace, Zalika could not sleep. The closer the coronation came, the stronger the dreams became. They bled into her waking hours. She saw flashes of a forest she'd never visited. Trees older than kings. A river that whispered her name. And always that girl. Her face. Her hands. Her voice growing louder each time. One evening, as she prepared for a ceremonial feast, she looked into her polished mirror and saw two reflections. Not a trick of the light. Not a dream. Two faces. One calm, one sorrowful. One dressed in jewels. One dressed in leaves. She gasped and stepped back. The mirror shattered. Shards flew across the room, cutting her palm. The servants rushed in, frightened, but Zalika dismissed them. She wrapped her hand, staring at the blood, and whispered again, "Who is she?" A letter arrived that night and signed. A scrap of parchment slid under her door, containing only 5 words. "She walks. She remembers you." Zalika tore it to pieces and burned it in her candle. But the scent of forest smoke lingered long after. Meanwhile, Amara's journey had already begun. With only her staff, a water skin, and the crest wrapped safely in silk, she left the forest and stepped into lands she'd never known. Birds circled her. The wind carried her name in strange tones. And far away, in a city that had tried to forget her, bells rang in preparation for the crowning of her twin. Their blood had once been one. Now it called out across hills and rivers, through dreams and omens, through falcons and fire. 2 girls. 2 fates. 2 thrones. And the time of silence was ending. The palace grew colder, not in temperature but in spirit. The warmth that once flowed through its gold-lined corridors seemed to retreat into the stone walls, where unseen eyes now lingered. Servants began walking faster, whispering less. Doors creaked where they never had before. Candles flickered out in rooms without wind. And at night, the sound of crows cawing echoed endlessly above the domes and towers, though no one could find them in daylight. Mirrors cracked without touch. First one in a guest chamber. Then another in the queen's dressing room. Then a dozen all at once during a feast, when the nobles were laughing and Zalika raised a goblet to toast the future. The crash silenced the room. Everyone turned to look. She stood motionless, staring at the shards that reflected not just herself, but something else. A face half-shadowed, watching her from the corner of each broken piece. She did not scream. She lowered her goblet and sat down, pale but composed. Later that night, her mother demanded an explanation. "A trick," she said. "Perhaps a servant's mistake." The king dismissed it coldly. "We are on the eve of greatness. Let no old superstitions disturb us." But Zalika could not sleep. In her chambers she paced. The windows, though shut, rattled softly as if something outside wanted in. Her hair moved even when the air was still. Once, she saw a shadow cross her room though the fire remained untouched. Her dog refused to enter. Even her favorite harp produced dissonant notes, as if struck by invisible fingers. She sat on her bed and pressed her hands together until her knuckles turned white. She was not afraid, not exactly. But something deeper churned inside her, the sense that something long buried was scratching its way to the surface. She called for Nana Bintu, the nursemaid who had raised her. Nana was old now, hunched and slow, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "You haven't called for me in months," the woman said as she entered. "Does the crown no longer fit your dreams?" "I'm dreaming too much," Zalika said. "Things I don't understand. Things I see even when I'm awake." Nana sat beside her, smoothing the silk sheets like she once had when Zalika was small. "Tell me, child." Zalika hesitated. "There's a girl in my dreams. She looks like me. She doesn't speak. She watches me. And there are whispers. In the halls. In the walls. I think I'm going mad." "You're not mad," Nana said gently. "You're remembering." "Remembering what?" But Nana didn't answer immediately. She stood and walked to the old chest at the foot of the bed. From it she took a tiny wooden box wrapped in cloth. She placed it in Zalika's lap. "I was not supposed to keep this," she said. "Your mother would have my head if she knew." Zalika unwrapped the box. Inside was a piece of cloth, dark blue velvet, torn and faded. Embroidered on it, the royal crest, the serpent and the sun. "It's old," Zalika whispered. "It's from the night you were born," Nana said. "You weren't alone, Zalika. You were never alone." Zalika's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "You had a sister." The world tilted. Nana continued, her voice like a slow drumbeat. "Born just minutes after you. Both of you came under the blood moon. The prophecy frightened your father. One shall rise with a crown, the other shall fall with silence. He believed that meant only one of you could survive. So, he made sure the kingdom only knew your name. She's dead." "No," Nana said. "She was hidden. Taken to the forest. Given to a priestess named Eleni. No one was to speak of her again." Zalika couldn't breathe. The dreams. The mirror. The shadowed face. It all made sense now. "She's alive," Zalika said. "She's coming." Nana looked away. "I've heard whispers. Guards who vanished in the eastern woods. Spies who returned with strange eyes. Some say they saw a girl walking barefoot in moonlight, and the trees bowed to her. If it is her, the blood in your veins is waking something ancient." Zalika stood. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "Why wasn't I told? Because the throne is built on silence. On decisions made in shadows. The king believed he could outweep prophecy. But prophecies are not riddles. They are warnings." Across the mountains, in the forest thick with mist and birdsong, Amara stood before a stone she had never seen before. It was hidden behind thick vines and a crumbling wall deep within a grove that even the oldest maps forgot. She had followed the falcon again 3 days in a row. It had circled, cried, then disappeared into the trees. Each time she followed, it brought her closer to something. This time, it led her to a path that opened only when the sun touched a certain tree root, the light flickering like fire, and then the ground itself seemed to breathe open. She stepped through vines slick with dew and found herself in a glade so quiet the wind dared not speak. In the center stood a tomb, built from smooth stone with symbols carved all over its face: serpents, suns, stars, and crescent moons. At its center, words etched in an old language. She ran her fingers across them. The letters shimmered faintly. Mara. Her name. Below it, another inscription. "Here lies the queen not known, the voice not heard, the sister not seen." She fell to her knees. A sound echoed beneath her. A heartbeat. Not her own. The stone shifted slightly under her touch. A groove opened and inside was a stairway leading downward. She hesitated, then descended. The air grew heavy, thick with incense and dust older than memory. Her fingers brushed symbols carved into the walls, stories told in pictures: 2 girls in a cradle, a moon split in half, a crown dripping blood. At the bottom of the stairs she entered a round chamber. At its center sat a throne carved from black stone, shaped like a coiled serpent. It shimmered faintly in the dim light of the torches that ignited by themselves as she entered. She walked forward slowly. Her heartbeat was a drum in her ears. Then she saw it. Blood. A slow, steady drip from the throne's edge, though no wound could be seen. It pooled on the floor like a warning. The scent was metallic and familiar. And it wasn't old blood. It was fresh. She took one more step. The throne pulsed. A voice rang out, not in the air but inside her mind. You were never lost. Only forgotten. Amara clutched her chest. The birthmark on her skin burned. The throne remembers what others buried. A wind swept through the chamber though there were no windows. It whispered in a dozen voices, some angry, some weeping. They took your crown. Not to protect you. To protect themselves. Amara's eyes filled with tears. Not just of grief, of rage. Rage older than her body. It filled her bones. The blood that flows from this seed is not just yours. It is hers. It is theirs. It is truth. She stepped back. The torches dimmed. The whispering faded. But the blood kept dripping slowly, endlessly. She walked out of the chamber and back into the light, her face set. The falcon sat waiting for her atop the stone tomb. Amara looked back once more. She understood now. She was not just a hidden child. She was a memory the throne could not forget. A voice that silence could not kill. In the palace, Zalika stood at her mirror again. Her reflection no longer alone. The girl beside her smiled now, not with warmth but with knowledge. Whispers filled the walls. Neither sister would sleep that night. The throne was no longer quiet. The eve of coronation arrived like a breath held too long. The skies above Nuri darkened not with clouds but with something older, heavier. It was not night yet, but the sun had vanished behind a cloak of unnatural blackness. Birds stopped singing by midday. Dogs barked and then whimpered into silence. Farmers left their tools in the fields. Children cried for no reason, and elders refused to speak above a whisper. The city knew this was no ordinary dusk. It was the night of the rare black moon, a celestial event that had not visited the kingdom in over a century, last seen when the twin daughters were born. The people tried to celebrate. Dancers painted their faces and performed in the square, but their feet faltered. Drummers missed beats. The air felt wrong. Heavy. The kind of heavy that sat on your chest and refused to leave. Inside the palace, golden lights illuminated the stone halls. Servants scurried in a panic of silent gestures, lighting candles, brushing silks, preparing platters. The smell of roasting meat could not cover the scent of tension. Every mirror had been covered. Every portrait of the royal family had been turned to face the wall. The queen insisted upon it. When the king objected, she had turned on him with wide, feverish eyes and said, "Tonight, the past will bleed through the walls." Zalika stood in the heart of her dressing chamber, surrounded by fabrics and gold. A crown made of obsidian and pearls sat in its velvet box, waiting for her. But she made no move toward it. Her eyes were fixed on the window, watching the strange blackness grow over the sky like spilled ink. The moon? Where was the moon? Not hidden. Gone. Swallowed. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. No one answered. The maids had all been dismissed. Only her own breath and heartbeat filled the air. She turned to her reflection in the window. But the reflection didn't match. Her eyes were different. Her face too soft. Her lips parted slightly. Zalika turned away before she could see the girl blink. Beyond the gates of the city, hidden by a long cloak of deep forest green, Amara stood barefoot at the edge of the road. Her feet were calloused from walking for days, bleeding in places, but she felt no pain. She had passed through village after village where whispers followed her, not from mouths but from winds, from roots, from animals that paused to watch her pass. Ravens had accompanied her for 3 nights straight, one always perched nearby as if guarding her steps. Now she stood at the boundary of the capital. The guards at the outer gate spotted her and readied their weapons, but something in the air changed. One of them staggered and dropped his spear. Another stepped back, clutching his head. Amara took one more step. The ground beneath her rippled like the surface of a pond. Dust rose without wind. A low hum vibrated through the stones. The guards fell to their knees, not from fear but from the weight of something ancient pressing down on them. She didn't speak. She only placed a hand on the gate. The wood turned black under her touch and slowly, without creak or sound, it opened. Villagers watched from windows as she entered. Some clutched their children tighter. Others made warding signs over their hearts. but none dared stop her. They knew. Even without knowing her name, they knew. She moved like a shadow, her cloak brushing against stalls and stones. Vendors stood frozen, their wares untouched. A baby in its mother's arms stopped crying the moment Amara passed. An old woman bowed her head. "Black Moon," she whispered. "She has returned." At the river, the water had begun to churn strangely. A boy fetching a pail was the first to scream. The current had stopped. Then it reversed. The water flowed backward, defying gravity, pulling leaves upstream, dragging boats the wrong way. Fishermen dropped their nets and ran. In the royal temple, the Queen Mother stood in the center of a great circle of light, surrounded by incense and robed priestesses. They chanted softly, rhythmically, to ward off the ill omens that gathered like storm clouds. The high priestess stepped forward, her face painted with silver lines. "We must begin the rite of crown's blessing," she said. The queen nodded but trembled. Candles were lit. Flowers placed. The crown was brought in on a black velvet cushion. The queen reached for the anointing oil with shaking hands. Suddenly, the flames of every candle rose 6 feet high, not burning upward but outward, forming a circle of fire. The queen dropped the oil. Her eyes rolled back. Her mouth opened, and a sound that was not her voice escaped. "Amara." Every priestess froze. The queen's body convulsed, then collapsed. The crown rolled from its cushion and landed with a loud clang. Outside, the wind roared like a beast awakened. The palace banners tore from their posts. Windows slammed shut on their own. And above all this, the black moon showed itself, a perfect, round void in the sky. Not even stars dared to shine beside it. Zalika stood on the palace balcony, watching the city below flicker in confusion and fear. She could feel her sister getting closer. She didn't need a map. The pull in her chest was like a chain dragging her toward fate. She whispered her sister's name for the first time in 16 years. "Amara." In the grand hall where the coronation was to take place, nobles arrived in silence. Many wore extra charms and whispered prayers under their breath. The king paced beside the throne, furious. "This is nonsense," he muttered. "She is the heir. The crown will be placed. The gods have no say in it now." The high priestess, pale from the queen's collapse, approached him slowly. "The spirits stir tonight. We cannot ignore the signs." The king turned on her. "She is the only one who matters. There are no others." But as he spoke, a servant burst into the hall, breathless, terrified. "Sire," the man said, "there's a girl. At the gates." "What girl?" "She looks like Her Highness. But she's not." "And the people?" "What about them?" "They're bowing. In the streets. They don't know why." The king's face turned to stone. "She cannot be here." "She is," came Zalika's voice from behind him. She entered the hall in full ceremonial attire, but her eyes were distant. "And she is not what you think." "She's come to take what's yours," he snapped. "No," Zalika said. "She's come for the truth." Outside, Amara stood at the final gate to the palace. The guards opened it without question. The wind carried flower petals through the air, not from any offering but from trees shedding their blossoms all at once. Crows circled above her. Inside, the Queen Mother stirred on the temple floor. Her eyes opened, wide and wet. "She walks the stone path," she whispered. "The silence is broken. The throne will bleed." And in the deepest chamber of the palace, where no light ever reached, a crack appeared in the old stone at the base of the throne's pedestal. A slow, dark red droplet began to slide down its side. The throne had started to remember. The crown too. The coronation night had arrived, not as celebration but reckoning. The kingdom held its breath. And 2 daughters of prophecy stepped closer to the moment that would change everything. The palace corridors echoed with confusion. Panic spread like smoke, whispers of omens, of shadows that moved without light, of a queen who fainted mid-ritual, clutching the air and crying out a name no one dared repeat. Servants ran barefoot across stone floors, guards barked orders with hands trembling over hilts. But deep within the storm, between torchlight and shadow, walked a girl no one saw. Amara moved like a ghost, barefoot and silent, her cloak heavy with the scent of the forest. The guards were too distracted to notice a stranger entering the heart of the palace. Her breath caught in her throat as she stepped onto the marbled halls. The stone beneath her was cold, foreign, and familiar. She didn't need a map. Her feet knew the way, guided by something older than memory. It was as if the walls remembered her even if no one else did. Each painting she passed, each suit of armor, whispered fragments of forgotten things. A lullaby never sung, a cradle that once stood empty, a name spoken only in hidden places. Amara didn't pause. She walked straight into the part of the palace few dared tread tonight, the moonlit corridor leading to the queen's private garden chamber. And there, under a hanging veil of white blossoms and moonlight, stood Zalika. Amara froze. Zalika was facing away, her royal gown catching silver glints in the breeze, the weight of her crown not yet upon her but already pressing down. Her posture was strong, queenly, but something in her shoulders trembled, a doubt, a question, maybe a fear. Amara stepped forward, the stone cool under her bare feet, until the sound of a fallen petal made Zalika turn. Their eyes met. It was like facing a mirror that told no lies. Amara's hood fell back, her hair wild from wind, her eyes dark with questions, her presence as raw as the earth. Zalika's lips parted, her face draining of color. For a heartbeat neither spoke. The air itself seemed to bend, the moonlight holding its breath. "What sorcery is this?" Zalika whispered, taking a step back. "I am no sorceress," Amara said softly. "I am your sister." Zalika's face hardened, confusion boiling into defense. "No. That's not possible. I don't have a sister." "You do," Amara said, unfastening the clasp of her cloak. Beneath her collarbone, just above her heart, the crescent-shaped birthmark gleamed under the moonlight, identical to the one hidden on Zalika's own skin. Zalika stepped back again, her breath catching in her throat. "Who told you?" No one knows of that mark." "I didn't need anyone to tell me," Amara said, her voice growing steady now, as if something ancient was speaking through her. "The forest told me. The stones told me. Your dreams, told me." Zalika's face twisted. "I've dreamed of a girl with my face, with blood on her hands. And I've dreamed of a crown that burns," Amara said. "You and I, we were never meant to be apart." Suddenly, footsteps thundered behind them. The king entered the corridor, followed by armed guards and the royal advisor, all breathless and wide-eyed. His eyes locked on Amara, and for a second, just a second, something like recognition passed over his face. Then it was gone, masked by rage. "Seize that impostor," the king roared. "She's here to disrupt the coronation. She is a threat." The guards surged forward, but Amara didn't flinch. Her eyes were locked on Zalika's. "Ask him why the Queen Mother cried my name. Ask why your dreams have my face. Ask what happened the night we were born." "Enough," the king bellowed. "She is deluded, dangerous. She has the mark." Zalika cried out, her voice sharper than she meant. "Father, she has the royal mark. Just like me." "She could have branded herself," the king snapped. "This is sorcery. A forest trickster. Do not listen to her." But Zalika was no longer looking at him. She was staring at Amara's face, at her eyes, and in them she saw not a liar, not a thief, not even a stranger. She saw herself. She saw the same loneliness, the same hunger for truth, the same burden of a future carved long before they could walk. A guard stepped forward, his spear raised, but he froze. His eyes met Amara's, and something ancient passed between them. He staggered back, blinking. "I've seen her," the guard muttered. "In my sleep, she stood at the gates, the black moon behind her, and she wept blood." "Silence," barked the captain, but others were murmuring now. One of the maidens gasped. Another guard turned pale. "She is the prophecy," someone whispered. "Two born under a blood moon." "No," the king's voice thundered, his face red with fury. "There is no prophecy. I buried it. I buried her." Gasps rippled through the hall. Zalika stepped back as if struck. "You knew." The king's eyes widened, realizing his words had betrayed him. "I did what I had to do," he growled. "The kingdom cannot be ruled by uncertainty. By twin queens. It invites division. Or one crown. One heir. You chose silence," Amara said, her voice cracking. "You let the world forget me." "I gave you life," the king barked. "A life in the forest, free from politics, from danger. You should be grateful." "Grateful?" Amara laughed bitterly. "For being erased? For being hunted by nightmares while you raised one daughter and buried the other in silence?" Zalika looked between them, heart pounding. She suddenly understood the weight in her bones, the chill in her dreams, the way the throne always felt too sharp beneath her. It wasn't hers alone. The guards stood frozen, eyes darting between king and stranger, prophecy and truth. The corridor, once quiet and still, now trembled with whispers and tension. Finally, Amara turned to leave. "You don't have to believe me," she said to Zalika. "But the crown you wear was forged in my absence. And now the moon has turned black. And I have returned." She stepped past the stunned guards. None moved. The king didn't dare command again, not yet. Something sacred had been broken, something old awakened. Everyone felt it. Even the stones. Zalika didn't follow. Not yet. Her eyes stayed fixed on the hallway, on the shadow her sister left behind. And in the silence that followed, she finally remembered her first dream, the one no one knew of, where she stood at a throne soaked in blood, and a voice that sounded like hers whispered, "This crown is not yours alone." The great hall shimmered with golden torches, their flames flickering as if nervous of the night to come. Guests from neighboring kingdoms stood in hushed awe beneath the towering columns, dressed in the finest silks and adorned in gems that caught the light like stars scattered across a velvet sky. Yet despite the grandeur, there was a tension in the air, thick, clinging to every breath like invisible fog. It was the coronation night, the moment the kingdom had waited for. The clock neared midnight. Zalika, draped in ceremonial robes of sapphire and silver, stood tall before the throne. Her face was calm, carved into practiced royalty, but her eyes betrayed her. They flicked ever so slightly to the darkened edges of the hall, to the heavy doors, to the robed priests chanting in circles, to the faces that watched her too closely, as if expecting something more than a queen. Her heart beat like a drum beneath her chest. She could still feel the cold touch of her sister's fingers from the encounter days ago. Mara. The girl who wore her face and bore her truth. Zalika had screamed at her, accused her, refused to believe it. But the mark on Amara's shoulder, the royal sun-shaped birthmark they said only the chosen heir bore, haunted her dreams and now her waking mind. Even now she could see it when she blinked. Amara had been dragged away, still in rags and chains, her cries echoing through the halls. She had pleaded with the guards, her voice trembling yet strong, "She is not alone. The throne knows the truth. It remembers." But none listened. None dared to question the bloodline they had bowed to for decades. A low bell tolled. Midnight approached. The high priest stepped forward, bearing the ceremonial crown, a golden ark woven with black pearls and 3 crimson rubies, said to be soaked in the blood of the first queen. As he raised the crown into the air, the torches dimmed. The hall seemed to breathe. Zalika took her place before the throne. It stood tall, carved from obsidian stone and decorated with old royal sigils. But tonight, its surface looked darker than usual, almost wet. No one noticed. Or perhaps no one dared speak of it. A sudden gust of wind swept through the hall though every window was closed. The guests shivered. The torches sputtered. Outside, the black moon, rare and ominous, passed over the sky, swallowing every star. A silence deeper than any lull fell upon the kingdom. Zalika slowly lowered herself onto the throne. A loud crack echoed. She froze. Then gasps erupted around her. A slow, thick stream of blood oozed from beneath the throne's armrests. The dark liquid slithered down like fingers, coiling onto the dais and soaking the hem of Zalika's coronation dress. Her eyes widened as warmth spread across her body, but this warmth was unnatural, sticky, alive. She stood up abruptly, but the blood had already clung to her like vines. Priests dropped their scrolls. A noblewoman screamed. A child began crying. And from the back of the hall, a voice rose above it all, cracked, urgent, wild with desperation. "Stop the ceremony." Amara's voice, still hoarse from shouting in chains, rang through the chamber. She had escaped. A bloodied guard limped behind her, whispering apologies, eyes wide with the same confusion that now claimed every soul in the room. "She sits on my blood," Amara cried, her arms outstretched. Her feet were bare, and the earth beneath her left muddy streaks across the polished marble as if nature itself followed her into this place of lies. "Seize her," the king shouted, his voice filled more with fear than authority. But no one moved. Zalika looked at her sister, her dress soaked in blood, her hands trembling. "What is happening to me?" she whispered, her voice not meant for anyone else but somehow heard by all. The high priest turned pale and dropped the crown to the floor with a loud clang. It rolled toward the stairs and stopped at Amara's feet. Then the ground shook. A deep, ancient groan rose from beneath the palace floor. Cracks appeared in the marble, snaking their way from the throne outward. The blood moved faster now, racing across the floor like a river finally unleashed. And then, from the darkness they came. Figures shimmered into view, not ghosts but something older. Royal ancestors dressed in armor and robes of past centuries, their eyes glowing with moonlight, their expressions neither kind nor cruel but heavy with judgment. Some bore wounds, some bore crowns, some bore chains. They circled Zalika. Then Amara. Then the throne itself. "The throne remembers," one of the spirits intoned, her voice like wind over dry leaves. It remembers the betrayal, another said. The child hidden. The truth buried. The blood of the forgotten is not forgotten, said a third, raising a ghostly hand toward Zalika. Zalika sank to her knees. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't ask for any of this. Amara stepped forward, her voice firm. But I did. I asked every night who I was. I bled to understand. I followed dreams carved into tombs. I heard your whispers long before I knew your names. The spirits turned toward her. One bowed slightly, the first queen, her presence undeniable. You are both daughters of the blood moon, she said. But one sat in silence while the other spoke with the earth. Another spirit added, one was chosen by hand, the other by fate. The ground trembled again. The throne cracked down the center. A scream tore through the room, but it did not come from either sister. It came from the throne itself. A final gush of blood exploded from the crack, drowning the platform and extinguishing every torch. Darkness reigned. When the torches relit, not by hand but by unseen force, the throne was gone. In its place stood a stone platform, and on it were two identical crowns. One was tarnished, darkened, heavy. The other was bright, gleaming with an inner light. The spirits spoke as one, choose not with envy but with memory. One throne to rule, one to guide. Blood binds but truth frees. The crowd watched, breathless. Zalika looked at Amara, and for the first time, no fear existed between them, only recognition. Only mirrored pain. Amara stepped back, gesturing to Zalika. But Zalika shook her head. I've worn lies all my life. You walked the truth. Amara hesitated, then stepped forward. She took the bright crown in both hands. As she did, the air warmed. The blood on the floor began to retreat, sliding back into the crack like time reversing. Zalika took the tarnished crown, pressing it to her chest. Two sisters stood side by side. And for the first time the throne did not bleed. The palace buzzed with chaos, and in its underbelly, shadows slipped through the corridors like whispers. Amara moved swiftly, her wrists bruised from the iron shackles recently broken. The guard, Nuru, ran beside her, torn between duty and something older, something deep in his bones that told him the girl was not lying. He had seen her face in too many dreams to dismiss it now. They fled through a back passage, ducking beneath low arches and stepping over forgotten bones buried in dust. I know where it is, Amara said breathlessly, the tomb. The tomb? Nuru glanced at her as they moved through the narrowing tunnel. The one in the forest. The one with my name carved into stone. I have to show you. They slipped out through a hidden gate behind the eastern watchtower, where the woods stretched like black ink under the heavy sky. The wind moved in strange rhythms, like it too was unsettled. Nuru had known these lands since boyhood, but now each tree felt like a sentinel watching their passage. The forest greeted Amara like an old friend. She didn't hesitate, not even once. The trees parted for her, as if remembering the baby carried away beneath their branches 17 years ago. They followed a winding path that narrowed and thickened, thorns reaching out as if to test her blood. But she pushed forward until they came to a low hill choked in moss. Amara stopped, her chest heaving. It's here. She crouched and began to dig with her bare hands, peeling back moss and roots like someone uncovering an ancient wound. Nuru knelt to help her, his hands calloused but careful. Eventually their fingers struck stone. A slab old and cracked. Carved into it were the royal sunburst crest, and her name, Amara. Nuru sat back, stunned. This was here all this time? He whispered. I didn't understand what it meant when I was younger, Amara said softly. But now I know. She pressed her palm to the stone and it shifted. With a groan, the slab moved aside, revealing stairs that spiraled downward into darkness. Nuru hesitated only a second before following her. The passage was tight, carved through ancient rock, smelling of damp earth and forgotten incense. They descended in silence, the torch Nuru carried casting flickering shadows on the walls. The stairs led to a chamber that felt untouched by time, stone walls etched with runes, tall candelabras unlit for decades, and in the center, a small altar of bloodwood, deep red and veined like flesh. What is this place? Nuru asked, voice low with awe. It's part of the old palace, Amara replied. From before the fire, before the new wing was built. They buried it when the prophecy came, they tried to bury me with it. She stepped toward the altar, and the flames of the torch flared as if reacting to her presence. Upon the altar sat a thick stone tablet, chipped at the corners but still intact. It was sealed with wax bearing the royal crest. Amara's hands trembled as she lifted it. Underneath the wax, a decree was etched into the stone itself, not written on scroll or parchment. It was a birth order, signed and sealed by the royal priestess 17 years ago. "Read it," she urged, pushing it toward Nuru. His eyes scanned the ancient lettering, translating out loud as he read. "By decree of the council and upon divine signs shown by the stars and spirits, it is recorded that Queen Mandisa gave birth to twin daughters beneath the blood moon. The first, Zalika. The second, Amara. To protect the balance of prophecy, the second daughter shall be hidden until the time of reckoning. When the blood returns to the throne, so shall the truth rise." Nuru looked up, his hands shaking. "It's real. You are the other heir." Amara nodded. "They tried to erase me. My mother, she must have thought it would save us all. But they didn't know what the throne was truly made of." She pointed to the altar behind them. "This is bloodwood. The throne in the palace, carved from the same tree. It doesn't just hold a king or queen. It remembers. It reacts to pain. To the blood of the true heir." "The bleeding throne," Nuru murmured. "They thought the blood was magic gone wrong. But it's the throne rejecting her." There was a silence between them, thick with realization. The kingdom had crowned the wrong sister. The blood, the trembling earth, the signs, all of it pointed not to disaster but to correction. The prophecy wasn't a curse. It was a warning. They sat for a moment, catching their breath. Amara traced the lines of her name on the altar, her heart beating like thunder in her chest. For so long she'd lived in shadows, believing herself an outsider. But this was proof that the silence surrounding her life had been manufactured. She had not been forgotten, she had been hidden. Nuru stood, his voice solemn. "We have to take this back." "They'll never let me near the throne again," Amara said, eyes distant. "They saw me as a threat the moment I walked through the gates. Then we don't go to them. We show the people." He tapped the tablet. This is truth. The kind the ancestors don't let stay buried." Amara met his gaze. "You believe me now?" "I believed you the moment the throne bled," he said simply. "But now I know why." They packed the tablet carefully, wrapping it in cloth and tying it with vines. The weight of it was both literal and spiritual. It carried not just their hopes, but generations of lies and the key to unraveling them. As they climbed back into the forest, the air had changed. The wind whispered louder, like voices brushing through leaves. Amara paused and tilted her head, listening. "What is it?" Nuru asked. Zalika sat in her chamber, her coronation robes stained with dried blood from the throne. The scent clung to her like a second skin. No amount of scrubbing could rid her hands of the crimson residue. The echoes of the crowd's panic still rang in her ears, but louder than that were the whispers of the ancestors, their judgment fierce and unforgiving. The moon outside had regained its silver light, but inside the palace, a storm brewed. Zalika had not slept since the ceremony. The image of the chained girl screaming from the palace floor replayed over and over in her mind. She saw the same face staring back at her in her mirror, though with eyes that burned with truth instead of fear. She remembered the birthmark. A mark that matched her own. An identical mirror, one she had never been told existed. The girl hadn't flinched, hadn't lied, even when dragged away by guards. Zalika had wanted to scream, to ask questions, to cry out. But everything in her was frozen. And now she needed answers. She stormed through the palace corridors, past stunned servants and trembling guards, until she stood before the Queen Mother's door. It opened before she knocked. The Queen, her face pale and drawn, stood already waiting as if she knew her daughter would come. "Mother," Zalika said, her voice low and dangerous, "who is she?" The Queen stepped aside silently, letting Zalika enter. The chamber was dimly lit, and incense burned from a brass bowl in the corner, but even that could not mask the tension in the room. The Queen poured herself wine with a trembling hand, her eyes darkened with age and secrets. "Sit," she said. Zalika did not. "I saw her. She bears the mark. The same as mine. She bleeds when I bleed. And the throne, Mother, the throne bled beneath me." Silence. Then the Queen whispered, "Because it was not meant for you." Zalika felt the air leave her lungs. The fire in her chest flared higher. "What did you say?" The Queen sat heavily as though the truth itself was too heavy to bear. "She is your sister. Your elder. Born first. The true heir." Zalika's world tilted. Her knees gave way and she stumbled backward, catching herself on a carved pillar. "No. That cannot be." "She was born during the eclipse," the Queen murmured. "Your father was away at war. The birth was difficult. Her mother was—" she paused, swallowing thickly. "A threat. a woman of the forest, of power. Chosen by the spirits to bear the next ruler. My mother, Zalika said sharply, was a priestess of the royal line. The queen mother nodded slowly. Yes, your mother. The woman who raised you. But she was not the woman who gave birth to you. Zalika stared at her. Her mouth moved but no words came. She gripped the folds of her robe tightly, heart pounding so hard she felt her veins might burst. She, Amara, was born with the mark, the queen continued, voice growing weaker. I saw it. I knew what it meant. The ancestors had chosen her. But I was afraid. I had been waiting for power my whole life. And suddenly it was going to someone else. A girl born of the wild, of old blood. So I did what I thought I must. Zalika's eyes narrowed, voice like ice. What did you do? The queen mother looked away, eyes glazed. I poisoned her mother. As she lay in bed, holding her daughter. She died before sunrise. And the child? Zalika's voice broke. I ordered her taken into the forest. Left where the wild things go. No name. No trace. Gone. Zalika's breath caught. Her chest heaved, rage and sorrow knotting together. But she survived. The queen nodded slowly. The spirits must have intervened. The bloodwood trees, they do not forget. And the throne, her voice cracked. It was carved from the roots of those trees. It was said to awaken only in the presence of the rightful heir. I did not believe it. I thought it was old myth. But when it bled, I knew. Tears welled in Zalika's eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Why raise me in a lie? Because you were mine, the queen said fiercely. You became mine. You were soft, obedient, loving. You were everything I had lost. I raised you to be queen. And you are worthy. But the throne does not care for who is worthy. It only listens to blood. Zalika turned her back to her mother. Her mind burned with flashes of her childhood, of feeling alone even in celebration, of hearing a voice in dreams that was not hers, of seeing another girl's eyes when she stared into water too long. All her life she'd thought she was whole. But she had been raised atop a silence thick with betrayal. I saw her in my dreams, Zalika whispered. Since I was little. We used to talk, though I never remembered her face. We used to play, in the garden. But I thought I imagined her. She remembers you too, said the queen. Your bond could not be severed. Zalika turned around slowly, eyes blazing with tears. And yet you tried to break it. You tried to kill her. You let me believe I was the only one. You fed me a lie for a crown built on murder. The queen bowed her head, old and suddenly frail. I wanted to protect you. From her. From the world. From the truth. No, Zalika said, stepping away. You wanted to protect your own ambition. You did not protect me. You chained me to a curse. The queen's hands trembled. So what will you do now? Zalika's voice was clear. I will find her. I will bring her here, in peace. She deserves truth. She deserves to stand before that throne. And I deserve to know my sister. The queen mother rose suddenly, grabbing Zalika's wrist. If she returns, they will demand you step down. You will lose everything. Zalika met her mother's eyes. Then it was never mine to keep. She pulled away and strode from the room. The air in the palace felt heavier but somehow clearer. She could feel her sister's presence in the stones now, in the wind that blew through the courtyard. Amara had survived the forest. She had followed the dreams. She had found the bloodwood and the hidden truth. And now it was time they faced each other, not as strangers, not as threats, but as sisters. Zalika stood before the guards outside the great hall, her voice unwavering. Bring her to me, she commanded. Unchained. Unharmed. Bring her as my blood. And deep beneath the palace, where shadows had long whispered and thrones had bled, the spirits stirred.